Welcome back to Angie and Christie Right Now. Today we're joined by a creative force in both publishing and storytelling, and a champion of bold, culturally resonant stories. Our guest is both an author and a visionary founder of Honey Blossom Press, a boutique publishing house dedicated to amplifying underrepresented voices and curating stories that entertain, inspire, and make an impact. She's worked with best-selling authors like Kennedy Ryan and Jada Pinkett Smith, and through her agency, Honey Magnolia Media, she's nurtured the careers of both rising talent and household names. As a writer, our guest has also published heartfelt contemporary and women's fiction, sometimes under the name Tia Kelly, and is known for capturing the complexities of life, love, and relationships on the page, one story at a time. We can't wait to dive into her publishing, storytelling, and her entire creative journey. We are honored to welcome Keisha Mennefee to the podcast. Keisha, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you. And we're not going to go through the entire journey because I'll be 52 soon.
We'll ride that right along.
And I forgot snacks.
50s are a beautiful place.
They are. It's a move over world. I know what I'm doing now. So with all of our guests, we usually ask, how did you know you wanted to be a writer? I think we're going to ask you that because you are a writer, but you're also other things. So let's start with that. How did you know you wanted to be a writer?
I love storytelling. You can go back and say, ever since I was a 4-year-old girl, and just in my head, just making up stories, thinking of stories, people, places, things, and entering an actual a program like at the school I was attending that was open to the school. And I don't even remember writing the story, but apparently it won an award, for being in it. And it wasn't necessarily the saying, oh, I want to be a writer. It just was something that just kept following me. And as I got a little bit older, the era of music videos happened. And that was when you actually had storytelling in music videos. We went from the neon screens and squiggly lines and green screen dancing to actual storylines and singing outside in the rain. And I worked in the music industry too. So that creative part of me always kind of followed me through storytelling, whether it was writing books to thinking of music and other spaces, or even in sport, getting into product management. And then I circled back, it just kept lingering. I come from the era where you had to have an agent to get published and be published, you had to have an agent. And it was really hard to get in, but I just kept trying and trying and trying. And then I put it aside, then I pick it back up and try. And then finally it stuck. And that started the writing creative side. Wings got clipped, from a publishing experience early on. And I said, okay, I don't know if I want to do this. And that's where, as we mentioned, Tia Kelly came into play. And that was my test run back when the indie boom was kind of really kicking off with ebooks and all that. And I was like, oh, this is a great playground to just anonymously go out here and do this thing. And I just gave myself writing exercises thanks to a nudge from a friend. And it stuck. And it stuck in ways I didn't expect. Where I was like, oh crap, I need a website. I need an email address, because I just happened to see some conversations where people are like, who is this? Where is this coming from? And so Tia kind of grew from that writing experiment into its own other path. So now I'm in a space where I'm trying to, Tia had to go on a hold for a little bit because all these other things kind of happened. But Tia's coming back. And then I also want Keisha. My voice that I was working hard to come back into has been working through too.
So when you first started writing novels, what was the genre that you were writing in?
I was actually interested in writing contemporary women's fiction, and it was a harder sell at the that literary space. I really is that as far as me and craft, I don't want to say I don't have the strongest pen game when it comes to prose and and writing. Like I said, I'm more the storyteller. Mm-hmm. And my dad, who at the time was actually a pastor and a minister, was like, have you ever considered writing for Arabesque, BT Books, Kamani, Harlequin, like those spaces? And I was like, Dad, we're not doing this. But he had a coworker who actually published a book at the time. It was considered BT Books, I believe. It was either BT or Arabesque at the time, which was acquired by Harlequin and became Kamani. But she wrote for them. And he's like, that's how she got her foot in the door. I started looking into, he says, from what I understand, because we have like people who want to write in my family. I'm the closest to, as far as my line of family members that actually went into the publishing side versus I want to publish. So it's kind of like, I guess he's like pushing me because of his own dreams. And so he's just like, check it out. He's like, they pay, they pay a little bit. It's not as much as the big glamorous deals, but you'll get some, publishing credits. I looked into it and I found a press that did accept my work and it grew from there. But going into that was a shift because romance, you're at that time, you're writing a little bit more of a flowery prose.
Yeah.
I had to be more descriptive. It was interesting. I was also working for a small newspaper, like in the press side of it, started freelance and then went on as staff. And I ended up writing lifestyle and sports because my pen started going over into too many adjectives that you really don't want to put into, a traffic accident, I guess. So I could go all that. They're like, you can do all that with layups. You can entertain us with tennis matches if you want to, but you might not want to do that to a house fire. That won't be nice. So it gave me a little bit of space of that to really just try to hone in and develop. But then once I got into that lane, like it stopped. So I'm kind of in that space where figuring it helped me. It grew me as far as looking into other genres as well, and the benefits of what every genre offers, where you have suspense gives you the breadcrumbs, teasing, even nonfiction. You get the meat. Like so, it helped open me up over the past couple decades to really explore beyond. So thanks, Dad.
Yeah, that was very that was a guard almost, that's very good. I like that. But when you start looking into Harlequin and all these publishing houses, and like how many books did you have to write before they accepted one of yours? Like how many books had you written at that point?
I had a couple of drafts of different ones, but I had one that I was working on for years on and off for a few. It was one of those things where at work, this was back when dial-up was just coming into the thing, so I'd go off and write some things here and there, add some more. Interesting enough, the story that I did write initially, I scrapped it and I created that as the backstory for the first story I actually published.
Wow.
Something about it just from working on it so much and seeing it, and I was just like, this isn't, this isn't more of her backstory. What happens next? That realist thing that happens with me in life that always wants to challenge and question, like, okay, so they went off into the sunset, but they're going to get a divorce, because there's no way this could happen, kicks in. And that's where I decided to go with that story. So one good I want to say, like, I had a couple of hardcore full novels, and then I had a bunch of other randoms that was kind of the scrap pile that didn't quite have a home yet, or because I couldn't figure out where to take them. Nice. But it took a little while. It was at the time too. It was also difficult to find agents that would take a Black writer.
Oh wow, yeah.
And then the publishing houses that would publish them. So that was a little bit of where, as much as I tried to study the craft, get the books, read Writers Digest, look at Writers Market, all the guys that were out there at the time, the writing groups, what fit for the industry, but also what works for people like me, especially in that moment. We talk about diversity in publishing. At that moment, we have our Terry McMillan, you know what I mean? We have our Vivian Ward Campbell, like we have this, or you had to give that type of voice to something to be discovered and seen. And then when I went over into checking out romance and I started reading, and I read Donna Hill, and she had Intimate Betrayal, which I loved. It was more like a women's fiction, suspense, romance, all packaged in one. It didn't really have those lines. Then Brenda Jackson and Frances Gray, and then I started getting into like the OGs of romance in that space. And I was like, oh, this is possible. Nice. And I'm not competing with the voice. I really want to write to fit into this square peg over here. So yeah, it's kind of difficult to pinpoint because again, that tester in me that wanted to figure my way. Yeah, I wrote a couple of books, but I don't know how much I want to claim them, or if I was just warming up.
So how did you segue into, so you were publishing on Harlequin, and then you said you started to self-publish as well?
I didn't make it to Harlequin. No, I didn't get, it never happened. And I can't remember. I think I might have submitted. I don't know if I went that route at the time. Well, they were Arabesque BT books. I submitted to them. This was before Harlequin happened. But I had one published. I actually had a multi-book deal.
Nice.
And then it just kind of was one of those things where what I saw publishing was doing, and I get it as a publisher, the limitations of a publisher versus what you want. You know, everybody dreams of that moment when you publish your book. Oprah is like holding it up, your bestseller list, all the, you know, all the things will just suddenly just happen. Like, I know how to market this. I know how to get in front of people. And then at the same time, your publisher is trying to basically humble you, but how can also be a rough space on how some of them do it. So it was a little trying. And I don't want to say I was disappointed. I just was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, how am I going to do, like, how am I going to really invest in this for myself versus thinking that, you know, I have a partner putting this out with me. So that's kind of like the space that I sat in for a little while. And then one of the writers that also published with that small press at the time with me, we kind of clicked, you know, that marketing thing that's with me, which is kind of where all the other things happened. We released around the same time. I reached out to the other authors that were releasing the same month or so. I said, hey, we all have something happening. Why don't we try to co-promote together? And most of them were like, why? And I'm like, because people read more than one book.
Yes.
Like people read books, people read authors. Once they're done with your book, they're not going to sit and wait a year and a half, 2 years. Because at that time, it could take me 1 to 2 years for that next book to come out. And I was like, they're going to want, you know, let's do this. And this author, he was like, I'm open. What are you thinking? And we over time kept in touch. And then he was working on a project and he says, when are you going to write again? I need you to do this for me because I'm doing this project. And he's like, just write a novella. No one has to know it's you.
Right.
And it started okay, let me try this again. And so I'm forever thankful for him to get me out of that. He didn't use it because he kind of was like, okay, I'm reroute. Like, it wasn't that he's like, I don't want anything. I do. He said, I actually think you should go out and do this. But, you know, he was trying to get more people to do this project. And he kind of like, and it went a different path. But anyways, that's where Tia was born. And so because of that experience, that would connect me with this writer that kind of reopened this path and then connected me with a whole bunch of other indie authors. And the indie author world, you know, was taboo. You know, it had that reputation where it's unfinished, it's unedited, it's trash, who reads it. But I also came from a space where I would go in indie bookstores and I would find a lot of great books from people who were selling them out the trunk of their car. Created something, and that was no small feat then. Back then, you would have to spend that was when you had to invest $10,000 to $20,000 into publishing your own book because you had to order all these copies, have a storage room or garage to put them in, and find a way to get Walden Books at the time to carry them, or you're going wherever to try to really push it as a self-published author. Then it wasn't like the Amazons or Barnes where you can upload a book today and suddenly you're published. Self-published has been around forever, but at that point to get to really try to make a name where it carried over for then publishers and other outlets to say, oh, okay, so you can sell books. Now we want to sign you.
Right.
You had to invest. And so I always had a love for indie authors, but that once I got into that space as Tia and started meeting and connecting, seeing what was happening, and then also seeing we were all connected by this industry that just was dismissing us still.
Oh yeah. Like I think that reputation lasted for a while until Amazon started really helping out the indie publishers and people started seeing that there was amazing books out there that you could get from indie publishing. So absolutely. I love your story, Keisha, because you've done it just from like when we was talking for 10 minutes here. And I feel like I can already see like you are a fighter. If you want something, you're going for it, you're trying it, see where it leads you, going to the next place. I love that because I feel like if you want to win in life, you know what I mean? Like if you really want what you want, this is the attitude that you have to have. And I'm here
when it
for
comes
it.
to writing. Yes.
Like, I mean, that's awesome. Like, good for you. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, why not? One of my favorite things to do is to get in the kitchen as a foodie and just play, try recipes, do things. And sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. Obviously, you don't want to overinvest in your ingredients that you're going to trash. So you do research. You're like, okay, let me try to figure this thing out before I go in, but I still want to give myself room to have fun with it. And that's kind of like my approach with anything. Even starting Honey Blossom Press as a publisher, it's been something in the back of my mind for a very, very long time. The team that I work with through the years, we've had those conversations. If we're going to do this, what can we do that's going to be a little bit different than what someone else can do themselves? And taking the experience that I've worked on with other projects, pouring that in, sometimes the bandwidth, the hats that we have to wear as indies, a lot of them, and sometimes that is beneficial, but then what is that taking away from in other areas? On a Honey Magnolia Media side, we did publicity, marketing, promotions, expanded into literary management, and then also IP book packaging, where we create stories, content, and we work with authors to help develop those stories, similar to what studios and some publishers do. Take that book concept and bring it to the shelf or the screen or podcast or wherever. And so one of our projects was that it sold very quickly. It was a very unicorn out of the norm situation where we had some projects that are with tradition, because we were in the seat of the author with other publishers, with the big five, where we're selling these projects, our IP with the writer to a publisher, but then we're waiting a year or two for it to come out. It's going through multiple shifts and changes. But we were in a situation where one of our stories, the timing of it, the marketing behind it, everything, we knew the timeline that we had to get it out. We sold it as an audio first exclusive with an audio company, with RB Media. At the time, it was just Dreamscape. Dreamscape is now with RB Media. Okay. They released us an audio exclusive. The title's called Written Refrains. I'm actually a co-writer on that particular book. And they decided to release it. Universal said, we want to option it, try to develop as a TV series. And this isn't a matter of weeks and months, like right before it even comes out yet. We're like writing and like building a car with no steering wheel yet. The wheels are there, the frame, as these things are happening because of the concept and the strategy behind it. We option the audio, we option the screenwrites, but then we're sitting on print and digital. And, and because it was audio exclusive, we had a window where we could not release it in print and digital. We were initially thinking like, let's do indie because it'll take too long for it to go out if we go track to do what we wanted to do. The book has a country music tie-in, a little story in there. And the Beyonce effect was happening.
Nice.
We knocked on a few doors and we had some interest, but then in this era right now, audio is king. And because audio is off the table, some are like, we don't know because we don't get audio. And then a couple other spaces were like, we want it, but we want to rewrite it. And I'm like, but we've already done all this already here. And it's not, that's where you have to say, okay, is this ego and I don't want to change something, or does this make sense? And I was like, we've already put this product out like that. That's a big revamp. And meanwhile, the team is still looking at me sideways saying, so we've been talking about starting this thing. And that was finally the catalyst to say, you know what, like no matter what is offered or whatever, you know what your goal was, you know what you wanted to do, make it happen. You have the resources. And then Dreamscape and RB Media basically they were a part of that. Like, we want to help you make this happen. And we want to partner with you as your audio distributor for your project. And so again, knowing that audio is king, it just helped it make sense. We didn't want to get a book and then have to chase an audio deal later, where we wanted to make sure those things happen. So it worked out well. I love our partnership with them. Now that they're under the RV fold, like it's opened us up to even more lanes over there, because they have Ascent, Tantor, Recorded. They have a whole plethora that goes into the different genres. And we're publishing multiple genres. We came out with romance, but our first nonfiction comes out soon. Be in the Room by Lauren Morrison. I'm so excited that's happening. We have some more rom-coms happening. Farrah Rashan's new series. It's a reissue. We have a few reissues that are happening. That's a big thing that's been doing very well on the backlist of different authors. So we have Farrah and Sheila Ghosty are releasing prior release series for them. Sheila's is going to be exciting. That's kind of like in that modern Jackie Collins S5 that we're looking for. Jackie is timeless, but at the same time, it is timed.
Yes, 100%. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's still that appeal. So we're doing those things too. We have some more great nonfiction happening. A podcast that's coming out too. They're going to be doing something. The Class of 1989 was a great series that they did. So we're expanding that into book format. So I'm just excited about all that we're bringing, and a lot of that has to come because that audio partnership is going to hopefully get us in the hands of those readers who like to listen.
So how do authors find you, or how do you find your authors? Do you have a submission process? Do they just go to the website? And what do you look for when you're actually trying to find authors?
We have a submission process on our website at honeyblossom.press.com or honeyblossom.press. There is a submission link that way. We also go out and look specifically talent. Sometimes there are referrals, recommendations, agents. We also work with non-agent authors. We do want a story. we do want the idea and concept. But one thing that we don't try to do is turn our nose up at, like, you don't have to come totally at the ready. Now, we do want some order. We do want a beginning, middle, end.
Yeah.
We do want it tight. We
It's
do
always a
want the
plus.
structure.
You
We
want more
want the
than just like
mechanics there.
a napkin with an idea.
Yes,
No.
yes. I have this great
Or,
idea.
your 100,000 words that is still
Right.
going with no ending in sight. Yes.
Right. We have parameters, like there's certain word length, we're looking for a certain extent because these are books that we are actually printing or it's being audio. So it has to reach a certain, limit where it makes sense. We go through the full editorial process with them from developmental to copy
Nice.
to proof, like, and everything too. We take you through all the things that you're going to go through with another press, but more white gloving it at the same time. And so we're looking for people who can go through that. I know it's not just their story. It's like, what are they looking for? What are we investing in them just as much as they're investing in us? So it's also kind of like that X factor. Sometimes the thing. Sometimes we find some talent where we're like, they just need a little bit more something. And I love those stories as well as the ones that come shining and sparkling. I've been, like I said, fortunate enough to work with some really great talent that's known, but also the ones that are the unknowns that you're just like, how do we blow your name up, like get it out there. So that's been a process. Some of the authors like Ty, for example, who did Riffs and Refrains and then This Side of Beautiful, wrote in multiple genres. She came over as someone that I work with through Honey Magnolia. And she loves, I don't want to say genre hopping, but she's in different genres. And we're like, okay, how do we get the strategy of honing in on your romance and then your more women's fiction, voice? And so that's been a process. And so through Honey Blossom, we were able to steer that women's fiction voice a little bit more and get her with the editing team that can help say, this is how we make this stronger. And then hopefully there's tools that people like her can take, whether they stay with us or go elsewhere. That's also a goal too.
I feel like you guys are like creating a family. You know what I mean? Like you're taking these people and you're developing them, and you are interested in their career, and you want them to like blossom. Like I think your press's name is perfect. You're blossoming all these careers, and like I love that. You're like when you describe the white glove. I think as an author, that's what you want. You want somebody who cares, who sees you, who cares for your career, who cares for the name that you've got out there. So kudos to you guys. Like that is wonderful. I'm very curious as a writer, and now you're a publisher. Like what's something that goes on in the publishing that we writers don't know about, that you're like, if I tell you this, it's going to explain so much of what's going on with your book or your career?
The industry changes. The industry stays the same, but at the same time, the interests change. One thing that can happen is there's a couple of tracks. Working with indies and working with trail authors, there's different expectations. A lot of times indie authors are used to having all control, getting the bigger bag, doing all that stuff. But at the same time, if you go over to, once you start bringing other people in, whether they're indie or a big pub, you're now getting more with that in exchange for what you got to give up something to get something. So that is one issue that sometimes when we go in these negotiations and conversations, they're like, I want control of this. I want to earn that. It's like, but we're investing. We're trying. We have to recoup. We also want you to make money. Like, so those are factors that are carried into that. There's a lot of conversations about what people think happened, and there's a lot of correct conversations out there, but there's also not. There's a lot of, conversations that are very loud and wrong that I encourage, instead of regurgitating, research, accurately research, not going to the people that are saying it loud and wrong, but do your due diligence. There's resources and tools, and there's people that are willing to say, this is the experience, and don't go off of any one person's experience or the same set. Like, you've got to find people in different clusters because we kind of stick together based on our similar interests. So if you go to the same group that feels they had a great experience versus the same group that had a bad, it's gonna be tainted. The control side of it is, I know everyone's different from working with client authors in a client space, but also being in a pub space and then being in the rooms. Like, I have conversations with a publisher from our books because, like I said, we've sold our own projects to them. And then I'll go in there with a name that has the big budget and they're the premier title for that season. And then I have the brand new debut where you can tell already, like, they're one click away from being a tax write-off because of something that they push that they feel like we have a dozen of you. So how dare you be happy with these stock images on your cover and go for it. So everybody's contracts are different than the terms are. And sometimes it's the skin and like what you do to prove that track record sometimes, because it is a lot what these numbers do. So sometimes it's not personal, it's business.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to be that person. I've had to catch myself a few times where I'm like, Keisha, it's not personal as much as you like this. Like, you have to stop. You're going to start bleeding out. You know, before these titles come out, a lot goes into them. But I also want the author to feel as much invested in it. They don't feel like they turned something over. I had a conversation with one of our authors recently, a couple of them actually, on their covers, which is something. As a writer, we dream not just here's my baby, but how are we dressing her up when she leaves the hospital? You know?
Right.
And we go through this. My strategy marketing brain of like, well, how do we dress this window starts playing with it, some ideas, but I want that person in the room with us.
Aww.
Very rarely are we going to go and say, this is your cover, or here's your option, or give me an idea what you want and then run with it and then say, this is how we interpreted it. We're going through those steps with them. Nice. And saying, how can we elevate your brand or make this stand out? What is the current trend that's happening? I've been fortunate enough where we've been a part of projects that have been the comps. They were comps for covers, comps for deals. So being in those spaces where you're seeing that, I've been there where they say, here are the comps.
Nice.
And this is what we find. And I'm like, I did that cover with XYZ, or we did that, like
so
to
cool.
know, like to say that. And it's not, it's not fun, but basically saying it's like things. So like with Mia Heinzelman, for example, with her Divorce Return series, Mia does a lot of illustrated work on her covers.
Beautiful.
That she does. Thank you. And so we wanted something that was going to say Mia, but different for this, because it's her, in this track space. So we tried to come together, like what works for Mia, but what gives us that different spin that still stays consistent, but also brings in the genre. Right. This side of Beautiful, when we did this one, again, had Ty in the room. We wanted something that would also, because of this book, we knew that Black indie romance, their covers and their look and aesthetic is different than what you find for trad. Mm-hmm. And we want to try to find out what's the best of both of those worlds. How do we capture that and also speak to this story that's angsty and romantic and, and layered. And it's beautiful, but it's not your standard of beautiful. It's called this, because it's like, where you have a heroine who was diagnosed with as bipolar, and the hero who is also undiagnosed, with his own mental health situations that are going on, and trying to find their own beautiful in that. Mm-hmm. So how do we capture that, but also speak to the audience of Black indie romance readers as a trad, publisher? So we do that. So the authors are in the room. Contractually, we're always like, yeah, we have the final say, because you want to get Florence Cujo or Morris Chestnut or somebody in the cover. Right. We're not fighting to do that, but we're going to try to, or if you go MIA, because sometimes those things happen. We still have to keep the ship going. So those are things that happen too. And that's why sometimes that language looks the way it does. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there have been situations where there have been people who have been heavy-handed in how they exploit that language. Mm-hmm. We don't want to be those people. Right. We want you proud of the work that comes through. Love that. We want your readers to feel like you cared as an author. Because at the end of the day, their name is on that book. It's not just, they come for the publisher, but they're going to come for the author, so that's what we want. I know, I told y'all, see, I tell everybody, y'all need to give me a time limit.
No, are you kidding
about your baby and being able to actually talk to someone, because we interviewed Ty and love her book, and just being able to hear kind of what went through your mind when you were trying to find the cover, and how you were able to bring your authors in and help them, when they make those kind of big decisions for their book, because that is their book baby. And a lot of I'm sure a lot of times that doesn't happen with your publishers, where you can actually be able to put your input in. And so that's a beautiful thing.
It is. Absolutely is.
It is, because sometimes, like I said, I've been in the room with publishers and authors. That control of a cover is, you don't typically have it. It's probably like 2 or 3%. I don't know the number, of that in the industry, but sometimes it's a matter of a couple of simple questions. Mm-hmm. One thing that we went through, especially working with Kennedy, since her Hoops days, was having something that speaks to the reader. So like when we went in to do Queen Move, like I was on set with her photo shoot for that because we wanted to make sure representation happened in a way for a Black woman on a small press. Like that was the first book that publisher ever did with a woman of color on their cover. And so in that, it was kind of like explaining that, and it wasn't saying that they couldn't handle it or not, but we wanted, like how her hair looked. Like it literally, there was like we knew that her hair, was going to be natural in some of the photos, but we're like, we need the curl to look like a natural curl, that angle. And they're like, but
Right.
no, trust me, we'll get it. Like we'll get these moments, like these things, like just trust us. And they're like, it's just the curl, like it's just hair. They're like, no, hair is such a big thing. And and with her styling series, going through, like, that was a big part of that, like having women, like representing that space, but then also the other touches that she does. And so like having those types of conversations, and then knowing where the resistance can come in from one side, but also trying to figure out, how do you express this where they're just like, we're not going to overinvest, we're not going to do the time budget. Sometimes you're like, it's not that. It's just listening, or asking, or hearing, or asking the right question. Or when I talk to authors and clients, I'm like, get us the examples and explore. We go through, whether it's the story, the words, or the visuals or pictures, or even the graphic campaigns or whatever. We go through, like, let's take a moment, an hour, Zoom, and go through everything one at a time. And once we do that big picture versus the overall, we're like, oh, I do like how that is with that. Or I do see what you mean about layering this text in the story, or why that reaction matters. Because I told you, I'm the realistic, the one at the end of the day. Somebody says the Libra. It's like, whatever that thing is, like, okay, so they love each other, but really, how do I as a reader walk away? If I'm going to be mad, you read The Side of Beautiful, as you mentioned. One of the big things about her, Janae, as a character, was we knew that we were going to introduce a Black woman that's already going to have a thing in some people's mind when they read it. She's going to come in smoking hot, in a way. She's automatically setting you up to be an unlikable heroine, like, to some readers. So how do we help her in this journey? Either we're going to have this uphill battle, or we help incorporate ways to get the reader to invest and care and invest in their journey in that space. It's one of those books, I think either people are going to love it or hate it, and I think that sometimes it's because of their experience, and how it's told. Ty's background is in psychology too, which is very important, layering all of that and how we broke it down. We didn't want something that was going to say, oh, okay, I'm going to love you through this, and it's okay. It's like, no, we've got to show this result. Sometimes it was like, one of the things I brought up, I said, they're going to be trauma bonding at some point at the rate they're going. So how do we address this?
So true.
Or do we have a trauma bond, or do we not? You know what I mean? Like, because if I'm a reader later, like, I also want healthy representation. You know what I mean? Like, representation comes in all ways. So if we're putting these stories out there, I don't want to ever put something out that could ultimately be harmful to the reader. No. How they interpret. And not saying that that's going to happen, but at the same time, as like, things are going. So what are these things when people are seeing something in them? It was important for Landon to have his own art. So as they're going through it, they don't go into this codependent space, that they can exist apart as well as together. So like that's the layering and stuff that I've learned working with my clients over the years, that I'm hoping we can pour into our Honey Blossom.
I have a question
family.
for you, because like, you're talking like an editor, publisher right now. Like, that headspace is very clear and it's beautiful to hear. And I love that you're integrating the writer in every aspect of it. That's fantastic. But what I'm curious about is, how does that make your writing? Like, did your writing get harder after that? Because now are you like going through everything that you write, going like, like, are you?
So Clickmate by Tia Kelly was supposed to come out 2.5 years ago.
Okay. Uh-oh. Got my answer. Okay.
And that's why I think we have such a difficult time with our own stories. Yeah.
It's hard, because especially because I told you, Tia started out as, let me work on dialogue. Let me work on a sex scene. Like, I literally wrote a novel because I was like, I want to improve writing sex scenes. So let me figure this out over here. Like, let me, and then it kind of was like, oh, wait a minute. And I'm one, like, I work in the music industry. I tell people this all the time. Like, I work in that all the time, but I can't say, I don't know what a C from a W note is. I don't know any of that stuff.
Right.
But it's an ear, and it's something else that you hear, and you know, like behind the scenes. And that's kind of like where this is, where I love and know storytelling, but the actual mechanics of it and how it comes throughout. Like, and I'm perimenopausal, excuse me, audience, but when you're over it, you over it, you know, and you kind of like, you know what, y'all getting on my nerves. Y'all need to just hurry up and make up and go. Why do we need a black moment? That is stupid. Like, we don't need this. Like, you know, like, this is my brain versus the Keisha in the seat of, no, this is how you need to write your book. So I'm struggling with this, or I'm overthinking it. And, you know, my own issues with anxiety and, you know, in my own, you know, in my own mental health space has slowed some things down. But more importantly, when I'm going, I call it creative whiplash when I'm working with so many clients. Like, even Honey Magnolia has taken a shift on what we initially offered to what we're doing now. We dial back a lot over there where I'm not working with clients in that space. I going from a Kennedy Ryan, you know, project, because with Kennedy, you know, I was involved in every process with her. From, you know, she's like, this is the story I want, this is the world I'm going, these are the things I want to produce over here. And I'm not in that team, but I'm in those conversations knowing how we're connecting all those dots.
Okay.
So I'm like, and then she's like, and then I'm reissuing these books over here with this publisher. So these are the cover things that I'm thinking. And here's the alpha manuscript that I'm reading, you know, and she, you know, so I'm kind of like in this continuous world over here, and it's such a big space. And she and I have parallel minds, like our brains sync up so much.
Nice.
And it's great, but it's also in this creative space when we're like trying to do our own thing that I'm just like, okay, we, you know, I don't like, I want to give that room. And then, so I'm doing creative whiplash with all those clients over here. And then even the book. So Honey Blossom has been one of those things where I want to make sure that it off the ground is doing what it's doing, but I also want to give room to getting back to really honoring the creativity in myself personally. Even our IP stories that we did with Honey Magnolia, those are all brain babies that a lot of them, you know, came through me, like that I know. And that's a hard thing as a writer, is coming up with an idea and then saying, here, you take this idea and go work on it for us. And it's not as a ghostwriter. This is like, no, you take this idea and
go
run with it. And we pray you have success. And you sit there and look like, yeah, that could have been, you know, like, so kind of like being, like, knowing when I can let go and when I can, like, that feels good, because now I feel like these characters and people are out in the world, but now I want to be a part of actually pouring into the ones that I've held on to.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, there's a few that I actually going to be doing for myself more as well. Tia started out angsty, but really she's in like a rom-com space with Clickmate. And then there's another one called Great Expectations, where they're like vinyl junkies, friends for lovers, that's coming out later in the year as well. And then, like I said, and then I have a few more. I'm just really trying to just rip off the Band-Aid and let whatever happens, happens. You know, I don't want people to judge me based on the bar I try to set elsewhere, if that makes any sense. And that's really hard.
Yeah.
But I just have to forgive myself and let it be. And as long as I'm happy with it,
Exactly.
that's all. That's what I tell everybody else. As long as you're happy with what goes out, it doesn't even matter if your mama buys the book now. Because we used to say, if your mama buys the book, you sold the book. But now we're just like, as long as you're happy, you're good.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How many books does your publishing house put out a year?
Our initial year, we were aiming for about 12. This upcoming year is actually fluctuating, and then we're doing a big jump. So 2026, I can't even tell you exactly how many we have, because it's fluctuating, but we're going to be about, I want to say, between 45 to 60
Whoa.
titles is what we're looking at in 2026.
That's huge.
We're trying to speed through. Yeah, it's a big jump. But we're also doing some reissues that are there. We're giving it space. We're trying not to bite off too much more, but then, like I said, some of these are love series. Like Farrah's Bayou Dream series was one that she released. It was with Harlan. They were with Kamani at the time. Readers love that series. You know, it's small town, Louisiana.
Oh.
And, you know, and she just has a voice. It's in the region of the space where I found Farrah and loved her too. So, and just knowing that there's people who are looking for that small town rooted, story. So that's one that we really want to get out there. And that has 6 books in it.
Oh, wow.
Right
So,
there.
and they're going to be coming out pretty frequently, pretty regularly, but we're amping them up. Like it's the same content, but how we're putting them out, packaging, it's going to be really special. We're going to be announcing that soon and showing that to her readers. She's excited. I'm excited about it. Had great success with her Boyfriend Project series. She has a new release, Pugs and Kisses, that came out, that, all romance that's modern in that space, but going in like that, her home roots of like Louisiana, like that's where we find like this town. And so we're excited about that. And her Disney group, she's been doing some projects with Disney and doing well too. So we're excited for her, but like I'm really loving small town, especially because we're getting to that season, fall, winter.
Yeah.
That reminds us of wanting to be cozy and not so much, plotting to kill your husbands and running off.
So I want to ask you one last question because, like, I could listen honestly. Like, if you want to do 3 shows with us, I think that I would talk to you for 3 hours on fantastic stuff that you're saying. But one last question: if you are a writer and you want to submit to Honey Blossom, what are some of the things that you would tell a writer are important to your press?
I want to know the full concept, like the full story, not just I had an idea that a guy finds a rescue dog. Like I want to know the hook. Like I ask people all the time, what makes your story so special? And I don't say that to be mean. I say that to say what makes it so special, because everything out there has been done before. It is, it's told. And I say this to kind of give people that visual is I was told many, many moons ago that every story basically should be able to be traced back to the Bible or Aesop's Fable.
Oh, wow.
Like they think, like if you kind of think about like the origin and roots of these stories, those are pretty much where you're going to find a lot of how they've all bloomed and grown over the years. It's just, and people are going to tell the same, like you might have another writer, y'all might decide I'm gonna write this story. It's the same story, but how you tell it is going to be what's different. That doesn't mean go take somebody else's story and rewrite it. There's a difference. There's a difference. Let's clarify that. But what makes your story so special? What is that hook? What is that going to resonate with readers? We're an industry at the same time. So we, as much as we know that your group of friends might love the story, we'll take it. We want to see it have some success that's viable beyond that space.
Right.
Because I've had realistic conversations where I'm like, I think you can do even better if you sold this indie. And it's not saying I don't want it, because I do want it. I'm just being real, like what you might gain might have a better track than this, or taking it out because of our resources. I'm that kind of person. So I want the hook. We're looking for, as always, fiction. Nonfiction, it's got to be not just I had a really crappy job and I want to tell the world about it. How are we navigate? Like, what's going to make your story something that's aside from an Instagram post that is a moment? Like, what has legs? I believe in classics, hits that like are evergreen. Then every now and then there's a moment that can pop up that is like worth like, oh, this is different. Let's jump in it. I'm open to it all. I'm open to all different types of like, because we, that's who we are. But I ask that you follow the criteria on submitting that partial synopsis, how to find you and contact you. In the world of AI, please don't go to AI and then send me a submission with prompts, like, because we get that.
Amazing.
Copy paste.
Amazing.
And I'm just saying that now, like, just because that's a whole nother conversation, but we are getting those. We are getting the prompts on these, like in the submissions, and we're like, not just that we've noticed it, that's what we see the prompts too. Like you should, I don't want to tell you how to deal with that, but yeah, we are intelligent, but we also want something that you believe in and stay behind. How you come to your story, I just want it to be an authentic process that you believe in, and then that story can carry on with you as we go through that process. Because if your book doesn't come out for a year or two, are you still going to believe in that book?
Yeah.
And then when you go to promote, books are evergreen. Like I said, Farrah's release, Sheila, if we go to reissue, like, can you stand behind that book in 10 or 20 years? Would you care or know about that book? We want those kind of projects. So that's what we're looking for. Representation, we're open to everyone. But what is your representation, as I mentioned, comes in many, many ways. Obviously, as a Black woman in publishing, our lineup features a lot of Black women, that have gone through some things or not been able to get their voice heard in ways or seen that we hope that we can be different, but we are open to everyone.
Beautiful. I love it. I love the way that you're doing your publishing house. I love A to Z. You guys are on such a good track. I absolutely adore it. And thank you for sharing it with us. I mean, honestly, I could talk to you for another 3 hours if you were. It's fantastic.
Y'all, we are like now friends. Like we are
I
there.
love
like
it.
we're in a group chat here.
So what are you working on now?
Now we are prepping for a couple of releases. Clickbait, finally. It's happening. Love You a Bit, Love You a Little Bit. We have some exciting things for that. That's by Kasha Thompson and a couple of other projects with her that will be rolling out. I mentioned Sheila and Farah. Lauren Morrison's Be in the Room, which are our first nonfiction title. Lauren is a business coach. I call her a corporate bestie. She's amazing. She's great. She's just like that person. She wants to be in the room with you, help you get in the room, help you stay in the room, help you feel comfortable in it, and then let you know when you need to walk out that room and go in your own. Like she's that person that's really good at helping you sourcing through that and has great experience with that. So I'm really excited for that. And then a few more projects that we're going to be rolling out in the winter time, but that's pretty much what we have coming up for the fall. So I'm excited for that too.
And so for the books that are coming out next year, the 40 to 60, have you already found authors for those books, or are you still looking for?
We're still looking. We still have a few slots. I'm one of those that I always try to keep a few things open just because our audio team calls us the disruptors. I think they used to say that nicely. I think now they're like looking at me sideways, like, come on now, that you can't make this happen again, but we do try to do some things that are different, not because we just want to be different, but because why does this have to happen like this? I understand systems, but if we can get a project out in 4 to 6 months, then can we make that happen? Obviously if we need like a media buildup or something like that, we want to build that. But if it's something that has legs that we need to jump on before a trend or readership changes or shifts, they're into this week, and then next week the next thing will happen and their interest shift. And so we want to be able to adjust and modify with that. So our calendar for 26, I don't want to totally lock it out just in case there's the readers that say, I really, really would love to see this, and we're able to figure out how to make it happen.
So what are readers looking for right now? What is the trend that's because I always seem to miss it. I'm like, fantasy and NA and like right on the tail end of everything. So what are they looking for now?
It's interesting because where we are in this moment, I'm looking to see, like, I know where we were, literally a couple months ago. I've been in this kind of quiet still to see. I like to see what is happening now and then what we're on the cusp of. But I can't really call that right now. I'm still like trying to, I have some thoughts. I hear some things. Unfortunately, our teams come back and say, this is what we're finding. This is what we're seeing. This is what's trending. Like we wanted race car drivers a couple years ago and, because of Formula One and those kind of conversations have happened. But also it's looking at culture. I think that we're in a space like romanticy obviously had a big space. I think that there's other facets of romanticy, that we want to see. Trad is not done a lot when it comes to Black romanticy. That's been an interesting space. I've seen it come out in different ways. There's a couple new releases that are just happening as well that are landing in that space, but we're not seeing a lot on Trad and on Trad shelves for that. And I think that there's still room, that's going to be a place. But obviously culture, politics, even the world are influencing like our emotions and how we're feeling and what we lean into wanting to see. Are we looking for outlets? Are we looking for escape? And that mood. So I'm thinking like some of the stuff, the feel good in its own way, it's sticking. A lot of industry people thought rom-com was going to be done a couple of years ago, and it's still finding its way, because I think sometimes like we are still, I don't know if there's going to be a massive buy all the time for it. We just don't happen to keep putting out rom-coms, not that it's a lot, but because I think in that space, some of these stories need that little bit of an edge to help tell it. But we sometimes want to laugh, sometimes one thing that's important to us too is to educate when we can without preaching. So even a project we have called The Love Audit on the Honey Magnolia side, that has an interesting twist in it, that has a little historical thread, even though that's a rom-com. And that's with Lucy Eden. We did Love and Bloom, which introduced medicinal marijuana. Her grandparents had a farm that was a secret medicinal marijuana farm that she inherited. They didn't know, and the whole town was in on it, which kind of was different, like
That's
a different
cool.
new
Yeah.
spin. But we try to do a little different things here and there. But in the culture space that we're in right now, we just, I think that people wanna learn. People want to find ways to stay enlightened, but also want to laugh.
Yeah.
And sometimes they want to cry. We need outlets to just
Yeah, I
feel our
agree.
emotions. Yeah.
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 Okay. And so if people want to find you on social media, where would they, what are your social media links?
The handle for Honey Blossom Press is at Honey Blossom Press.
And do you have like a Twitter or I guess not Twitter anymore?
We are on X, TikTok, and Instagram as at Honey Blossom Press.
Okay.
And then our website is honeyblossom.com or honeyblossom.press. And that's where they can also go if they're interested in submitting, finding out more of our releases. All of our titles are available wherever books are sold, including libraries, and audio, in those spaces. And if you don't see them, or you can also check out Bookshop, which is great. That's a great space to, support your local indies as well.
Okay. Well, I guess we have to say goodbye now. It's been so enlightening, and
Thank
I love
you.
talking to you. Thank you.
I do too. Thank you for allowing us that extra time, and I really enjoyed y'all.
Oh,
It was a
thank you.
pleasure.
It was
Yeah,
so
this is
fun.
good. All right, so everyone, if you haven't watched any of our other episodes where we interview amazing authors, and we also will have Ty coming on, and you heard a little bit about her today, as she's one of Keisha's authors. And so if you haven't watched those, please just click on the link, and of course, please like and subscribe to our channel so that we can push it out there to more people and build the audience so that some of these authors who have some amazing books out there are found. So we just want to thank you again and say goodbye, everyone. So
Bye.